All right, let's go ahead and get started. Let's go ahead and call this meeting to order and start with roll call.
Mayor Bagley?
Here.
Council members Christensen? Here. Finley? Here. Martin? Here. Peck? Here. Rodriguez? Here. Waters? Here. Mayor, you have a quorum.
All right, let's say the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, regular session time, all kinds of ordinances to read. We're all excited tonight. All right, let's go ahead and start by reminding people that this meeting can be viewed on live stream at www.longmontcolorado.gov. Also, Chair would like to remind the public, anyone wishing to speak at public invited to be heard, make sure you get your name on the list, because if you don't get your name on the list, you can still say something because it's a regular meeting, but you're going to have to wait till the end of the meeting. Sometimes they go to like 1, and so that wouldn't be very fun. So, do I have a motion? And then you only have 3 minutes to talk, and then I have to cut you off, and even if I love what you're saying. So, do I have a motion for the approval of the January 29th regular session minutes? So moved. Second. All right, let's go ahead and vote. Thank you. I voted. No, it says me. Or is everyone saying? Anyway, that passes unanimously. Sure. Councilmember Peck, Councilmember Finley. All right, now it passes unanimously. All right, do we have a motion for the meetings, the meeting minutes of February 12th, 2019? Second. All right, let's go ahead and vote. All right, that passes unanimously. All right, additional agenda items and submission of documents, motions, et cetera, to put on future agendas. We got back a, thank you, Mr. May, for getting us back your, one-page write-up on what you plan on focusing on over the upcoming year. We need to have a part 2 on your annual review. So if you guys could set up an executive session at the earliest convenience, that'd be great. Anything else? All right, seeing none, let's move on. The item known as 4A on the agenda is actually supposed to be 8J on the consent agenda. So if council could take a look at the agenda and just make yourselves aware that 4A will be 8J on the consent agenda. It reads, approve an economic development services agreement with Longmont Area Visitors Association for provision of tourism promotion. So when we get to that, do whatever you think we need to do. All right, City Manager, do you have any reports?
No report, Mayor, Council.
All right, so I like this. On special reports and presentations, it says, skip, there aren't any. So that's very nice. Thank you, Harold. All right, so let's move on to first call, public invited to be heard. And I don't have a list. We have a list. So we're going to go with Olga Bermudez. Youth Council time. Nice.
Good evening, Mayor Bagley and City Council members. My name is Olga Bermudez, and I work for the City of Longmont at Children, Youth, and Families. And I'm the staff liaison for Longmont Youth Council. I would like to introduce the 2018-2019 Longmont Youth Council.
Hi, my name is Helen Leone. I go to Alexander Dawson, and I'm in 9th grade.
Hi, my name is Brianna Jimenez, and I am a junior at Twin Peaks Charter Academy.
Hi, sorry. My name is Kaylee. I'm Kaylee Leone. I go to Dawson, and I'm a senior.
Good evening. My name is Angie Bustillos, and I'm a senior at Meade High School.
Hello, I'm a freshman in Niwot High School, Melanie Victoria.
Good evening. My name is Ishmael Dominguez. I'm a sophomore at Niwot High School.
Hi, my name is Emma Milchek. I'm an 8th grade at Flagstaff Academy.
All right, cool.
Good evening, Mayor Bagley and members of the City Council. So this fall we worked on our annual Halloween for the Hungry Food Drive, and we also collected a little over 300 non-perishable food items that we gave away for the families at the youth center, and we're looking forward to work on this again this year. So, thank you.
Great, thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Bagley and members of City Council. My name is Kaylee, and I'm a senior at Dawson. Currently, we are working on making college more accessible for the students in our community. We're working with an organization called Aspire within the Youth Center. They promote accessibility to college. They work with students who are seniors. They work on helping them create essays for scholarships and for college. As a council, we want to increase youth opportunities for accessing post-secondary education, as we feel it's an issue that needs to be addressed. We're also developing an anti-vaping campaign that we plan to finish by the end of March. In April, we will create an online campaign that targets middle and high school students directly about the dangers of vaping. We will also reach out to the parents to inform them about what vaping is and how dangerous this epidemic is. We feel that vaping has become an epidemic that needs to be addressed, not only at a national level, but within our communities. It is essential to create a campaign that makes our community aware and prepared to work together to resolve this concern. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Bagley.
Hold on one second. Could you actually turn off the timer? I just want to make sure that this would have been business. So I don't want you to get the red light and then feel bad.
I understand. Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Bagley and members of the council. I am really excited to talk to you guys about our future plans with the Longmont Youth Council. We are going to be working on a sustainability campaign on the fall of 2019 and are excited to work with the Public Works and Natural Resources Department. Thank you for your time.
That it? Yeah. Okay, we got the thumbs up. Awesome. Thank you, guys. That was one of my favorite boards when I worked as a councilman on that with the youth. Awesome. All right, we'll go on with, actually, is that it? Is it Kaylee? You already spoke, right? Yeah, okay. Is there anybody else on here, or did you all sign up? Okay, but Kevin Crana? Okay, all right. Not a youth. No offense. Yep.
What exactly do you mean?
Calling
by
you
that?
out.
Mayor Bagley, City Council, I live very close to Fire Station 2 off of Mountain View. And the recent reporting, not knowing how accurate it was, leaves me concerned on a couple different levels. If indeed it was accurate, then it sounds like there were 4 people invited to the fire station for a walkthrough by a nonprofit. I think members of that community, that neighborhood, would be most uncomfortable with the rezoning of that fire station and for it to be used as a shelter. So I would highly encourage everybody to be very clear about your intentions in the future. If it was reported accurately, it leaves us uncomfortable as neighbors. A bigger issue is the transient population, honestly, in Longmont and how the city plans in the future to manage that. I work for a major city here on the Front Range. I handle all the safety and workers' comp issues for that city. And I can guarantee you that if we engulf ourselves in Longmont with nonprofits that cater to homelessness and transients, that we will be causing our own problems. Sure, Seattle and other cities are bigger cities, no doubt. Seattle spends $100,000 per homeless person to manage that. Portland is close to $35,000 per homeless person. I have walked through transient and homeless camps and seen things that I wish I hadn't seen, needles and feces and people that don't want to be in shelters. Shelters do not cure homelessness. All it does is spend the city's money in a big way. I would encourage the council to not go down this trap. There are many, many well-intentioned nonprofits out there that want to spend our money. Some of them are very good at what they do. There's no doubt about it, well-intentioned, But please be mindful in the future to not go down that road. At least be very cautious, because it will not solve the transient problem. Do we really want our police officers, our police department, to have close to 40% of their injuries directly related to the transient population? That's the road that we could be going down if we embrace transient populations. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not taking responsibility for this one. Is it Eric Keene or Eric Kern? Keene?
Good evening, Mayor Bagley, Council. Thank you for your diligent work this evening. We appreciate it. My name's Eric. I'm the Community and Events Manager for Left Hand Brewing Company, as well as a member of the board of Visit Longmont, also known as the Longmont Area Visitors Association. I wanted to come in this evening and speak. I know the topic of our contract has been of much debate over the last couple of months with the city. What Visit Longmont provides to Left Hand is particularly invaluable. The number of breweries in this town continues to rise, the number of distilleries and cideries, and inherently that would look like tremendous competition within our business, but through organizations like Visit Longmont, we are able to do some pretty remarkable things around beer tourism and beverage tourism in general that a lot of communities aren't able to pull off. Having that central force here is really, really quite valuable, and we deeply appreciate their commitment. As a member of the board who came on just in the last 9 months, I'm particularly excited about the direction that we're heading, about the new initiatives that we're putting into place to capture better data, to better track the spend that we're undertaking on behalf of the city. And the responsibility that we feel around that is well heard. Some of those initiatives will take time. Some of those things will come as a course of various organizations in town working together, but we really look forward to what's coming down the pike. That's really all I have. Thank you guys, and have a wonderful evening.
All right, Nick Evans.
Good evening. My name is Nick Evans. I'm the general manager of the Candlewood Suites here on Dry Creek Drive. I just wanted to speak as a hotelier in support of Visit Longmont this evening, and kind of just wanted to highlight that Visit Longmont offers invaluable resources to hotels through their marketing, RFP processes, and information flow that they can kind of delegate to our hotels. I think for a smaller market like ourselves, where at a local level a hotel may not have the budget to market all the time, a DMO like ours is invaluable for something like that, especially in the sense I do have my brand marketing at the Candlewood Suites, but I'm also a lesser known brand. So, sometimes my brand's marketing dollars might not go as far as, a DMO's office or something like that. So, I also just wanted to say that I think the marketing especially kind of drives us being a destination to kind of compete with some of the great communities in our Front Range too as well. I work for a company of about 30 hotels. I've kind of talk to various people who are involved with their local DMOs too, of scales of basically small tourist towns to towns that are about our size, and I feel like we're more than on par with them as well too. So yeah, that was kind of just it, and thank you guys for your time.
Thank you. All right, Lynn Owens.
Good evening, Mayor Bagley and Council. Thank you for your consideration this evening. I wanted to speak briefly about Visit Longmont. It was founded in 2008 after the public voted to approve the city lodgers tax. I personally joined the board in 2009 as a chamber appointee. I am proud to say that I'm the longest running board member to date. I do somehow feel I know something that might be of value to the City Council when considering to renew the contract this evening, so I have decided to share that with you tonight. The organization's growth. In the 11 years since the inception of the organization, lodgers tax receipts have grown 49.9%. Additionally, hotel room inventory has increased 86.5%. Visit Longmont understands the responsibility and is ready to fill those new rooms, and is in the best position ever to do so. Executive directors. First off, I have seen several executive directors throughout my time on the board. They include Gary Wheat, John Giantonio, Joe Ward, and the current executive director, Nancy Rizak. With Nancy, Visit Longmont has seen extreme growth and success. Nancy brought to the table the best viral campaign the city has ever seen with Loco. I think we can all say that we're crazy about Longmont. Nancy has hired and managed the best staff and board the organization has ever seen. And most importantly, she has been the best fiscal manager to date, always staying within budget and keeping the board's annual plan in tune. The Visitor Center. When I joined Visit Longmont, the original Visitor Center was on Kaufman. Just a couple hundred walk-in visitors annually were seen there. In 2013 and 14, the organization opened the Visitor Center on 4th Avenue, just off Main Street, recording 1,705 walk-ins in 2014 and growing to 2,108 in 2018. And finally, grant distribution. When I first joined the board, the city was in charge of the lodger's tax money set aside for grants to encourage events to increase lodging. However, the city failed to ever distribute any of that grant money. I believe it was in 2013 when the City Council approved passing the responsibility onto the Board of Visit Longmont. Since then, the board has successfully done so, resulting in grant recipients consistently recording increased room nights annually. In 2015, we saw 350 room nights, and in 2018, 993 room nights. Keeping all of this in mind, I truly believe that Visit Longmont is in the best place it's ever been to handle the tax dollars that the citizens of Longmont and the City Council has given us the responsibility to handle, and is 100% ready for the implementation of the new contract. Thank you for your consideration. And at this time, I would like to ask everybody in the audience that supports Visit Longmont to raise their hand. Thank you.
None of you count. It was after the red light. I'm sorry. Thanks for nothing. All right, no. All right, David Lewis.
Thank you. Mayor Bagley and Council, thank you for letting us speak tonight. And I'm, my name is David Lewis, and I'm a native of Longmont, and I'm the owner of Brew Hop Trolley. We started 2.5 years ago, coming up on our 3rd year, and I recently joined the board for Visit Longmont and as a hospitality appointee, and I really want to express how hard Nancy and Jara and Michaela work in getting visitors to Longmont and expressing, sorry, I'm kind of nervous, how hard they work at getting visitors to come to Longmont. Last year, Brew Hop Charlie was a grant recipient to promote visitors from outside of 50 miles of Longmont to come into Longmont to stay. So we work together with Visit Longmont, and being a lifetime member here, I just really think that this agreement needs to be passed, and that sorry, I'm nervous. So I really want now I'm just lost my track of thought, sorry.
You're talking about how you want us to pass
yes,
the 4A or now 8J about approving the Economic Development Service Agreement
yes.
with.
And with that, the website that they're revamping to collect data on how much people come into Longmont is invaluable, because numbers speak volumes, and we've been able to track numbers over the last couple of years with our business, and the amount of people that have come into Longmont and stayed in Longmont and stayed here, spending their money, staying the night in the hotels. We have an agreement. We have 4 hotels that offer discounts, so we're bringing people into Longmont, and we have information to provide with our trolley to to promote businesses in town. So what we do is we bring people into town and we highlight and promote everything that's going on at the breweries and cideries and distilleries. So I really would like to have this passed because of the hard work that they've done over the past year in getting this to you guys. So,
Cool, thank you. How do I pronounce this? Kimberly Gibbs? Gibbs? I'm not sure.
Good evening, Mayor Bagley, members of council, Kim Gibbs, 7468 Mount Sherman Road in Gun Barrel. I'm here because last week, Jeff Bowman gave an update to council on a proposal to expand the Longmont Airport and extend the runway, which he claims is needed in order to accommodate business jets. Tonight, I'd like to address one of the many inaccurate claims made in his accompanying report, which you've received. To paraphrase from his report, business aviation currently avoids using Vance Brand Airport, and those revenues are going to other nearby airports. That part is true. The report lists reasons why, citing poor FBO facilities, limited availability and high price of jet fuel, and the short runway length. In response, I'd like to read part of an email that I received in 2015 from an aviation business owner. And with that author's permission, I'm sharing the whole thing with you via email. The author's 40 years of aviation business experience includes operating as a fixed-base operator and a flight school. Title of his email was Aviation Businesses Move Away from Longmont Because of Mile-High Skydiving. Quote from his email, I enjoyed Longmont Airport for many years, then the skydivers took over. The pilots for the skydivers were a bunch of cowboys, cutting people off in the traffic pattern, taking off and landing in the opposite direction that the other planes were. Skydivers landing at the airport right in the middle of other planes in the traffic pattern. This is an accident waiting to happen. They already have had accidents with their airplanes running out of gas and ending up in Longmont neighborhoods. I run an aircraft sales and management company. I could not safely run my business demonstrating airplanes in a circus-like atmosphere after the skydivers showed up. This forced me to move my operations to Metro and Front Range airports. Under the current environment, it is not a matter of if, but of when an accident will happen. When I am flying my corporate King Air into Longmont for a meeting, I would tell my passengers that we will be landing at another airport and driving to Longmont for the meeting. I know I'm not the only corporate pilot familiar with Longmont who would make this decision. End quote. And I'll send you the whole email with contact details. The report authored by Jeff Bowman, who is a Niwot resident, although he claims otherwise, and Dale Van Zant, who serves as the chairman of the Airport Advisory Board, lacks credibility. It relies on smoke and mirrors to sell this phony bill of goods and to mislead you and the public about the predetermined need for a bigger airport. Please listen to all of the proposals that will be coming forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Gibbs. And for those at home, I recognized who that was, and I knew how to pronounce her name. All right, Dr. Marianne Wilmer? All right. Wilmer? Wilner.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley and council members.
Do you want to really get up there?
Yep.
All right,
okay,
cool.
Is that good?
Yep.
Okay. I'm speaking on behalf of the League of Women Voters tonight. I'm on the board and advocacy and action chair. We urge the city to set minimum hourly wages to employees of local companies paid with city funds by inserting a labor practices clause with an index for timely increases into these contracts. And we are currently waiting results. We've met with the staff, with the city manager and head of the human resources, who are now collecting current wage data from these companies. Typical debates about minimum wage have looked at the effects on the labor market. I'm referring instead today to recent studies that looked at the public health effects of low wages. What I'm going to be listing are from the New York Times from this past Sunday, an article called Dollars on the Margin. Low-skilled workers reported fewer unmet medical needs in those states with higher minimum wages, while those in low-wage states skipped medical appointments. Children benefited most from minimum wage increases. Raising the minimum wage by $1 reduces child neglect reports by almost 10%. Higher minimum wages are linked to decreases in low birth weight babies, lower rates of teen alcohol consumption, and declines in teen births. This is from an American Journal of Public Health article from 2016, and I quote, "When people live so close to the bone, a small setback can quickly spiral into a major trauma. An unpaid traffic ticket can lead to suspended license and a loss of a means to get to work. A $15 minimum wage is an antidepressant, a sleep aid, and a stress reliever." The director of the University of San Francisco Center for Vulnerable Populations, who's a physician, said that when the minimum wage goes up, I see it. People exercise more. They quit smoking. She referred to having the bandwidth to be able to do the work to quit smoking. Mental health improves dramatically, and folks immediately start eating healthier diets. I loved this sentence. A living minimum wage buys prescriptions and rest and broccoli and helps people feel more capable and valued. People thrive when they feel valued, and a population that thrives is one of your own cities of Longmont's Vision's 2020's goals. We of the League urge Longmont to raise wages for contract employees to the self-sufficiency standard. I'm included in this a copy of the Colorado Center for Law and Policy's 2018 self-sufficiency standard for Boulder County, which also divides it by family composition. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Doctor. I pronounced that right? Doctor. Doctor. Okay. All right. All right. That's it for our first call. Public invited to be heard. Let's go ahead and move on. Could you please read the consent agenda, City Clerk?
Yes, sir. Item 8A has been removed. That's Resolution 2019-22 regarding fees for criminal justice records, so that's off the agenda. Item 8B is Resolution 2019-23, a resolution of the Longmont City Council approving the license agreement between the city and Clover Basin Village Apartments for a police substation at 630 South Peck Drive, Longmont, Colorado. 8C is Resolution 2019-24, a resolution of the Longmont City Council approving the agreement between the city and Colorado Health Foundation for grant funding for Angel Initiative expansion. 8D is Resolution 2019-25, a resolution of the Longmont City Council approving the 2019 intergovernmental agreement between the city and Boulder County for environmental sustainability grant funding. 8E is Resolution 2019-26, a resolution of the Longmont City Council approving an amendment to the intergovernmental agreement between the city and Boulder County for parent education services. 8F is Resolution 2019-27, a resolution of the Longmont City Council approving the agreement between the city and Temple Hoyne Buell Foundation for grant funding to support the Longmont Bright Eyes initiative. 8G is Resolution 2019-28, a resolution of the Longmont City Council approving the agreement between the city and Colorado Health Foundation for grant funding for mental health and substance use interventions in the Rewind program. 8H is approve the submission of and authorize the mayor to sign an application for State of Colorado Justice Assistance Grant for the City of Longmont's Youth Redirection Program Rewind, Rebuilding Expectations and Walking into New Directions. 8I is approve Longmont Youth Council appointments. And 8J is approve an economic development services agreement with Longmont Area Visitors Association for provision of tourism promotion.
All right. Do I have a motion? Dr. Waters?
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. I'd like to pull 8C off the consent agenda.
You want to make a motion too?
I'd be happy to move the consent agenda minus item 8C.
All right, let's vote. All right, that passes unanimously. All right, let's move on to ordinances on second reading and public hearings on these matters. First of all, 9A, Ordinance 2019-15, a bill for an ordinance authorizing the City of Longmont to lease the real property known as Vance Bram Municipal Airport Hangar Parcel H-18A to Chad Brinkhoff. Are there any questions from council? All right, seeing none, let's go ahead and open the public hearing on Ordinance 2019-15. And I'm convinced that this is probably the most important work we do, because we do this, like, this is most of what we do is approving airport leases. We should be the Longmont Airport Leaseholder Board. All right, seeing none, let's go ahead and close the public hearing. All right, Councilmember Finley.
I move passage of ordinance 2019-15.
All right, let's vote. All right, that passes unanimously. All right, let's move on to the only item that was removed from the consent agenda, item 8C. Dr. Waters, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. So, Chief Butler, are you the informant on this?
I am.
All right. I just want to, for you and for the council, want to be clear that I think the Angel Program's a great initiative. So I pulled this off not because I don't support the program, I do, but I do have some questions. And they run along these lines. Is the Angel Program, or this initiative, is it intended to address root causes of mental health and addiction, or to treat the symptoms of mental health and addiction?
So, Mayor, members of council, I'm Mike Butler. I'm the public safety chief. You know, the research indicates that it's not so much mental health as it is addiction. The Angel Initiative is not designed for people struggling purely with their mental health. This is a design program for people struggling with addiction. And so what we see are people who struggle with, and we think some of the root causes are isolation. We think root causes are trauma in one's life. We think root causes end up being disconnection. And so we see a number of people who come in to our department struggling with those issues. The symptom is addiction. And so the Angel Initiative, in essence, is a leverage point to involve an entire community and involve a tremendous amount of social capital in terms of dealing with people who are struggling with addiction. And so the treatment itself, often people in treatment find themselves surrounded by people who care for themselves. And so they're making good connections, they're making healthy connections, which is different than what the cause was in terms of their addiction, in terms of being isolated, being disconnected. They're taking more accountability for their actions during this treatment as well. And so the other thing that the the Angel Initiative offers is we have angels who volunteer from the community, who actually support people who are in the Angel Initiative. And so there's another connection relationship. And so while the addiction treatment can be seen as simply treating a symptom, it actually gets down into the root issues of why someone is addicted. And so we do believe it addresses root causes, if you will. And so, but we also know that addiction is not an easy thing for anyone to try to overcome permanently. Relapse is significant with addiction. And we often see people back in the Angel Initiative once they've been through a treatment, we put them back into treatment. And today I just found out, I checked, we've had 138 people show up at the police department seeking treatment. And if you can imagine somebody, there's a little cognitive dissonance when someone says, go to the police department and deal with your addiction. There's a little cognitive dissonance there, but these people come in waving their white flags. They're on bended knee, and they are really desirous at that point of finding a treatment and a cure for what's going on. So I believe it addresses symptoms in terms of because sometimes the symptoms of what people struggle with addiction, there's loss of job, there's loss of family, there's loss of friendships, and that's what then causes this isolation and disconnection. And oftentimes the application that people have to complete to be part of the addiction or part of the Angel Initiative is fairly extensive. And so we look at their history, and that's generally what we see. So that's the best answer I have for your question, Councilman Waters.
So let me just tell you what I think I heard. To the degree that you can get to root causes, whatever those might be, through whatever treatment's occurring. But there's a whole bunch of scaffolding that occurs around individuals to help them through whatever that treatment experience is as a support system.
That's correct. And the other thing I didn't mention is there's around 30 employers who have agreed to employ people who are in recovery, which gives them another connection in their after recovery.
What I'm really going to get to here is what our position of public safety is on the balance between treating symptoms and going after root causes, because the language and the purpose of the project is, what it reads is, to provide holistic resource support and navigation to address other needs such as housing, medical care, mental health issues, education, and employment. So these funds are for those reasons, correct?
The funds themselves are to hire a case manager who can help navigate people to those connections and to treatment, further treatment if they need it.
Should I read this as housing insecurity, medical issues, mental health issues? Are those the effects of addiction, or are those symptoms of whatever caused the addiction?
Yeah, I don't want to avoid your question, but in some ways they can be both, because sometimes we see people without housing, sometimes we see people without jobs. We see people, again, that just don't have anything going on in their lives, and those become kind of root causes for why they're struggling with an addiction.
So someone who comes in and says, I've got a substance abuse issue and I'm homeless, or I've got other issues that would be classified as mental health, or I need help finding a job. This funding is specifically to help with those through a case management strategy.
Yes.
To help with those effects. I would assume those are the effect, not the cause. The cause of whatever's causing the addiction is likely to be the same causes of housing insecurity, medical issues, health issues, et cetera. Is that fair?
I think I follow that, and the answer is yes.
So our position of our public safety department is that we should go after and allocate resources to support people who are having housing issues, medical issues, addiction issues, mental health issues, education, unemployment issues.
Yes, it is.
Just wanted to clarify that is our position from public safety, and I assume our position as a city. And this we would not consider, you wouldn't consider, I don't think, but I'll ask the question, that accepting this would just be throwing money at the problem.
Not at all.
Okay, thanks. I move approval.
Second. All right. Joan? Sorry, Councilmember Peck.
Joan's good. Thank you, Mayor Bagley. So Mike, I do have a couple of questions as well. So my question is, in reading this, and I love the Angel Initiative. I've talked to Jeff Satter for years about it, and he does incredible work. But I'm wondering if the police department is not overreaching. And the reason that I am saying that is we have, and from the onset of the coordinated entry program, my concern was that they were not wholly involved with working with the Angel Initiative because it's a county-wide program rather than. So we have, through the Hour Center, through the Coordinated Entry Center, we have case management. We have people looking for housing. We have doctors and mental health care workers that are volunteering their time to help people. Are we creating another source, another entry point? Why are we not throwing those funds at the Hour Center, at the Coordinated Entry program, and saying, yes, these people are coming into the police department begging for help where they should go, and we are getting them on the right track. But instead of creating another department that handles this, why are we not telling the Hour Center and the Coordinated Entry program, you must address this? And because they've already got the case managers. We're getting a new director for the Hour Center. And that's what I would do, to be quite honest, instead of having too many programs that are all competing for funding. And is this really the job of the police department to get case managers for mentally, addicted human beings who are looking for housing and education?
So Councilman Peck, there's, I'm going to try to make this long response as short as I can here, but great question. And just know that we're not the first police department to start and activate an Angel Initiative. There's maybe 300 to 400 police departments across the country that have done that and have found great success in it. Also know that the police department seems to be in a kind of a unique position to leverage the request of and receiving of lots of addiction treatment resources. We to date have, and it's on our website, 105, we have access to 105 addiction treatment service providers. The other part of this is we don't work in isolation, and we don't work in a vacuum. In fact, we work very closely with the Art Center. We work closely with other nonprofits in this arena as well. And we work closely with Boulder County Public Health and other programs that work with addiction. But the issue with addiction is that treatment is very, very scarce. And typically people who have insurance or the financial wherewithal can get treatment sometimes. But those people who can't, don't have the financial wherewithal or don't have insurance, can't get treatment. And so because the public safety police is in a pretty unique position to access these addiction treatment resources, we believe it's something we can do. And by the way, to date, we have not spent any money, so we're not in competition with anybody for funding on this. All of the funding that we get comes through the social capital that we get is either on a volunteer basis or through the addiction treatment. And so this particular grant is a grant that they were giving police departments. And the LEAD and the CORE programs that we have as well are grants that were specified through the state of Colorado for police departments throughout the state of Colorado. And so, yes, as the city of Longmont, public safety, we saw that as a concern, and we saw that as an opportunity. We had an Angel Initiative already. We had a program called EDGE, which converted and kind of became CORE. And because we were ready to go with those two programs and had been operating those two programs, that made Longmont Public Safety quite attractive to the grantors in terms of getting literally $3.5 million to do these programs. And there's opportunities to renew those grants. So I just want to say, to date, we have not been in competition with anybody for any funding. And we do work very closely with a lot of other nonprofits. In fact, those nonprofits actually refer people to the Angel Initiative.
Okay, I just have one other comment to make. So in talking to Detective Satter, some of the people who come to you with addiction problems are housed in the jail until they get ready to be released. Am I incorrect?
That's not
they
correct.
Sleep there 1 or 2 nights, or?
No, well, typically, what we do, if someone walks through our doors and we can't find treatment for them right away, we work with mental health partners in the Alcohol Recovery Center. And there's detox centers within those facilities that we have people stay until we find the person that walked through our doors longer-term treatment, but not jail.
Okay.
Councilmember Peck, I wanted to touch on your question too. I think when you look at these grant funds and you look at the component of caseworkers and those types of things, the one thing we have to be cognizant of is that they are grant funds, and it's a limited period of time. One of the things that I've talked to Mike about and Karen and others is the need for integration in terms of how we move into the future. And so those are some of the things that we're going to have to look to in order to maximize our ability to provide services and continue moving in that direction. Part of what we've done, and we had a meeting last Wednesday, and I said, I want to understand the data because I want to see the different data sources and start crossing that information, so we really start getting a better sense in terms of what are we really dealing with and what does that look like. And I think that will then lead to some of these other components in terms of integration, because that's going to be important to long-term success.
Okay, I'm glad to hear that, because sitting on this side, sometimes what I hear is individual projects, and that doesn't make any sense to me. So I'm really glad to hear you're
And that's
looking at that.
we've got to integrate all of these things.
Uh-huh.
And sometimes when you look at lead and co-responder and the way the grants are, it's a good start. We then have to evaluate and then really determine how do we move in the future, because that there's a need coming. And that's why we have to look at this to maximize our ability to perform services.
Do you have any kind of a timeline as to when?
No, I want to see the data first, and so we've talked about that. And so I'll be working actually directly on getting some of that information to start looking at and identifying different things.
Okay,
The one grant is a 3-year grant. The other grant is a 5-year grant. And both of them are potentially renewable. And the one thing that I didn't say, Councilperson Peck, is these grants are designed as police contacts that we're deferring from arresting someone who's struggling with a mental health issue or someone struggling with an addiction. And so these grants are designed for that to be the referral process. So it's through police that instead of arresting people because they've committed a crime and because they were struggling with their mental health, or because someone was struggling with an addiction, or they're possessing a narcotic, instead of arresting those folks, we've turned the corner. And so those grants are designed based on police referrals, and that's another reason why public safety was the place where these grants went.
Okay, great.
Okay.
And to tie in, when you look at the Rewind program and you look at the evolution, it's taken time to get there. And the Rewind program is an example of integration and how we bring all of these pieces together, which was police department, municipal court, community services, youth services, and so that's what we always have to shoot for.
Okay, great. So with that, I move.
It's already been moved.
Oh, I second it.
All right, you can. All right, cool. It's been seconded again. I just wanted to say, I've had the opportunity. I've got, I don't know, 6 to 12 folks in our community at any given time that I'm engaged with that suffer from substance abuse and homelessness. And just yesterday, one of these individuals, Chief Butler, picked up the phone, and the question was, hey, they reached out to me. They had a relapse. What's your advice? He's always been willing to answer the phone, give advice. Just as a real life example, I'm not going to say names, but this individual, as a result of the Chief's the Angel Initiative and the Chief's dedication. For example, Detective Desmond was able to reach out and provide support to this individual. The Chief was able to reach out. Robin, his assistant, was able to reach out. A member of this council was able to provide a hotel room, but it wasn't a hotel room of, hey, well, just here's a place to sleep. It was, this is where you're going to go tonight, but what's the plan for tomorrow? And when this individual asked for food, it was, yeah, here's some money for food, but here's the condition. You have to come to our home or out to dinner with our family, and you are going to be included, whether you like it or not, to overcome that disconnection, that isolationism. And so it's a heavy lift, and I appreciate what you're doing. Dr. Waters.
Thanks. I appreciate your observations and your humanity. I mean, your support, not just of this individual, but of others, because I know of other commitments you make to folks in need. I wanted to be clear, as we approve tonight the additional grant money for the Angel program, which I think is very deserving, and I think the community is fortunate that we have both the leadership that has the vision and the wisdom to do this, and we have the resources to do it. But I also want to make certain that we're consistent when we talk about others that are housing insecure, that have had mental health issues, they have addiction issues, that we don't end up in conversations about that supporting them is throwing money at a problem when going after funds for this project makes sense. That would be hypocrisy, in my view. And I just want to make certain I'm clear and that we're all clear on what kind of decisions we're making.
Thanks, Dr. Waters. Let's go ahead and vote. And surprise, surprise, that passes unanimously. All right, cool. Thank you. All right, let's move on to general business. We doing okay? 50 minutes in, we're on general business. All right, let's keep moving. All right, Resilient St. Vrain project funding needs and potential interfund loan. The time is yours, briefly. Mr. Rademacher.
Mayor Bagley and members of council, I'm Dale Rademacher, General Manager of Public Works and Natural Resources. I'm here tonight to give you a brief update on the Resilient St. Vrain project, and most importantly to talk to you about some funding needs and some potential interfund loans in order to fill that funding gap. I want to talk briefly about a little background, basically why are we doing the project, what are we accomplishing, what are the upcoming phases of the project that are already in process. Talk a little bit about what the funding shortfall looks like, how that not only impacts progress on the project, but also potentially puts into jeopardy or risk some federal and state dollars that are intended to come into the project. Talk with you some options to address the funding shortfall, and then lastly to get your direction. So the floodplain of the St. Vrain, unfortunately, is still pretty similar to what it was in 2013. It's about a half-mile wide. What this slide is trying to show you is that not only the extent of it, but frankly some of the facilities that are in that floodplain, and that really goes to the issue of why this is an important project for our community to stay focused on. So it's things like a charter school, St. Vrain Valley School District facility, City of Longmont facilities, the St. Vrain Mobile Home Village. So any number of key areas down there, about hundreds of structures that are in the floodplain. This particular exhibit, I believe, was in your packet, and is intended to show you sort of the phase-by-phase approach that we're trying to take on the project. So the area in yellow is done, starting in the red zone, if you will, not the bar, but on the map, from Main Street up to just shy of the Burlington Northern Railroad. That's the area of the river that's currently under construction. So if you go over the Main Street Bridge and look west, you'll see the project. Also under construction at the same time is the South Pratt Bridge. Those two projects are well underway, and both are intended to be completed in 2019, this year. So the next stretch is the green area that goes around the bend and includes the Burlington Northern Railroad Bridge, which has been sort of a massive undertaking to get agreement with the railroad to replace that bridge, which we're happy to report we're very close on, and we should be bringing that agreement to you in the probably March, April timeframe, which will then clear the way for that project to go to bid. The design is complete on the project. We could be awarding the contract as early as June of this year. Hence the issue of why we need to fill the funding gap, because that particular reach, 2B, isn't fully funded at this point. The next reach is the area in blue. That's known as the Isaac Walton Reach 1. That reach is currently under design. That design effort will go through 2019. We hope to break ground in 2020, complete that project, that reach of the project toward the end of 2020. Then we're at Boston Avenue. The Boston Avenue Bridge is to go to start design this year, start construction probably more in time of the Army Corps project coming on, because the Boston Avenue Bridge is our local match. We need to bring about $5 million to that overall project, with the Corps bringing $10 million, and that then completes the purple stretch that gets us up to Sunset Street. What's key about that is once we get to Sunset Street, everything, all of the property on the north side of the river is then effectively out of the floodplain. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the steps we're going to take as we get there as well. So on the funding issue, this is a slide that we had in the presentation last August, where we looked at the funding strategies on the different reaches. In the other column is where we had anticipated funding coming from the sale of some of the remnant parcels. We identified that for City Reach 2B as well as for Isaac Walton Reach 1. And so we also identified on this slide the additional funding coming in from the Army Corps, the $10 million. It's shown in red because it frankly isn't secure until we have a contract signed with the Corps. We're showing the additional funding from Rogers Grove to Hover Road. That, if you recall, we talked about the possibility of needing additional debt financing in the storm drainage fund. We're not ready to bring that to you yet. This year, we're hoping to do a comprehensive rate and fee study. We will bring that forward either very late this year or early in 2020 for your consideration and discussion. So along the project, so on this particular slide, Main Street is on the right side and the Burlington Northern Railroad is on the far left side. The area in yellow is the area of the greenway that is going to be the final greenway, meaning the area that's required for the flood conveyance purposes of the project. We're adding upwards of 10 acres of property into the city public ownership in that stretch alone. Also on this slide, you can see the sort of two key properties. One is the 1140 Boston property. That's the one that you just extended the lease on a couple of weeks ago. That's a property that has been appraised at about $1.1 million. And then we have the Royal Mobile Home Park property, which has been appraised at about $2.5 million. Hence and both of those parcels have been purchased with your stormwater utility, okay? And that is the fund that we are trying to use to make the local matches to complete the next reaches of the project. So it's clear to staff that more time is necessary to consider those particular properties, certainly in line with the visioning that you have going on with your council work plan in that particular area. And I think we have time to do that. I don't think we have a crisis where we need to make an immediate decision. And so I think in order to allow that process to go through and for council to be fully informed on, A, do they even want to sell the properties? And if they do, what's the vision of what that could ultimately be? So the $3.6 million gap, what does that sort of mean? At the end of the day, when I say it puts in sort of jeopardy position some of the federal funding, it's the $3.4 million of FEMA money that we still have dedicated to Longmont, but we need to spend it on the Isaac Walton Reach. So we've got to get to that reach within a set time frame, which is why we're under design right now. The $9 million numbered next one down on the list is the CDBG-DR funding that Longmont has secured through that process. That is City Reach 2B. So that's the project that's very close to going to bid in a matter of months. The $10 million, as I mentioned before, is the Army Corps project, portion of the project. Also wanted to mention the First and Main Transit Station, which is another key city priority project, is in the floodplain right now. And if we do not continue to make progress and get this floodplain cleared, you either add cost to that project or you add consequences to it moving forward as well. So what are the next steps? What do we see happening coming up next? The first is, as I mentioned, to bring forward the BNSF Railroad Master Agreement, followed by the city going to bid on City Reach 2B in the April-May timeframe, completing the Pratt Parkway Bridge. Thank God, I want to get that bridge done, as I'm sure everybody that drives over it. So in June, and then completing City Reach 2A this fall. Completing a letter of map revision, also known as LOMAR. So sorry about the acronym, but it's letter of map revision through FEMA, which is the technical process that you go through to officially alter the floodplain. We want to start that process as soon as we finish Reach 2A this fall. And the timing of that is important because we believe once we're done with 2A, we're going to start to show some benefits on the floodplain. that will benefit property owners in the area, and also will sync up with the statewide effort to do the remapping along the whole Front Range. Then we hope to complete the design of Isaac Walton Reach 1, going to construction with that in the early part of next year in 2020. The Army Corps is going very well. Nick Wolfram was on the phone with them again today. We are anticipating getting their feasibility study probably in the first half of this year, sort of by the June sort of time frame. And then assuming that's going to come through the way we believe it is, in other words, showing a positive cost-benefit analysis, that we would then go into a contract discussion with them to go to design and construction. That could happen as early as this fall. So that could be in discussions and in front of you in a November, towards the end of this year time frame. That would then put in place for the Army Corps to initiate design in 2020, with construction possibly starting as early as 21. And then, of course, we need to get all the way to Hover Street as soon as we can. Once we get there, everything downstream of Hover is out of the floodplain. And ultimately, I think our long-term commitment is to get to Airport Road. In other words, to the edge of the city's planning area. So to sort of cut to the chase, the direction that we're looking for tonight, we've provided 4 scenarios. The first 2 scenarios both involve an interfund loan from the city's fleet fund to the city's storm drainage fund. Scenario A has the payback from storm drainage to fleet fund tied to the sale of the properties. That time is uncertain. That process is uncertain at some level. So scenario B is, again, a loan from the fleet fund with a repayment over 10 years based solely on a rate increase. And that would be an additional 5% rate increase above and beyond what we talked to you about last August. Scenario C would be to hit the pause button and hold until we can sort of round the wagons and get a plan together on how we're going to get our local funding together. And then, of course, scenario D is if you all have a preferred alternative on funding, that's certainly a possibility. I would also say between scenarios A and B, I could see those 2 working in tandem. In other words, if council, you decided that you wanted to proceed with the disposition of one of the properties, but not all of them, then you would pay down that loan, thereby having a lower rate impact on your storm drainage utility, if that makes sense. So they're not necessarily separate from each other. So with that, I'll take your questions.
Great. I move scenario D, that Marcia Martin just pay it with a check.
All in favor?
It hasn't been seconded. Marcia, do you want a second? No? No second. All right. Let's go ahead and Mayor Pro Tem.
Okay, well, I think that I can't imagine anybody wanting to do anything actually other than scenario A. We certainly don't want to raise any more. Anyway, so what I would suggest, I think we already decided that we wanted to hang on to lots 5 and 6 because they're on Main Street, and when Boston goes through, that would be terrific. But
and let me mention that, Mayor Pro Tem, if I may, you make a good point there. Those 2 particular properties were purchased with the street fund, and they are not considered a funding gap for Resilient St. Vrain. So the process on how you want to move through the consideration of those properties can be done sort of separate from a direct impact on the project.
Oh, okay. I would suggest that we go with scenario A at the mayor's suggestion.
If that's a motion, I'll second that.
But I would like to discuss the other properties a little bit. Do we have a second? Oh, you have
I second it.
Okay.
Yeah. Fantastic motion, Mayor Pro Tem. Yes. Fantastic.
So the other 2 properties, do we have the one on? Now I've lost my place. Okay. The the one on 1140 Boston Avenue. Don't we already have somebody who's interested in that? Okay. So that might be quicker sale.
We have a business in there.
Oh, good. Yeah, I know.
That's been in there.
Right.
And we've had people who have expressed an interest, but we have not moved forward. And I'm working with Sean and Tony to sort of head up that overall disposition effort as opposed to it being PWNR, because I think they're probably in a better position to know that that whole market out
I know that we have to eliminate the southern part of that building. Have we done
That's
that
done.
in order?
It's
Okay.
done.
So we're pretty good with that. The Royal Mobile Home Park, which has been reduced to basically a strip.
It's down to about 3.7 acres.
Yeah.
And,
still possible, and it goes right up to Main Street, I think?
No, it goes up to what would be the extension of Kaufman Street.
Okay. So that I see as something we could sell. I don't know if you have anybody interested in that.
So I don't know how far I want to venture into this thing, but for me,
I think you don't want to get into that.
I think the processes that we've been involved with, the envisioning process and looking at what's possible down there, I think this is a particular property that should be and could be best considered through that kind of an effort. Right. And that's going to take some time.
Yes.
But I think it's probably time well spent that will provide a broader look at everything.
Yes.
And hopefully better outcomes on what we choose to do with the property.
Right. And so meanwhile, and if we sold both of those properties, that would be the 3.6 million. But meanwhile, we can borrow from the fleet fund for a little while. Okay. So that's why I think scenario A is the best choice.
Councilmember Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. Seems to have gotten farther away. In the visioning process, there is a suggested process that essentially asks the people to weigh in on how this rather unfortunate area right now, it's a little bit, blighted, a little less than beautiful, shall we say.
Devastated, right.
Should be disposed of, and what Longmont would like to see growing up there. And that process extends at least until next fall with Rhythm on the River. So my question is, with regard to scenario A or scenario B or a combination of the two, when does the property have to be disposed of before it forces us away from scenario A and to scenario B? Because it doesn't seem like without going through that process, we're necessarily in a position to make a decision between any of these items.
I see Mr. Golden coming down. To answer that question, if I'm Jim, I'm going to want more clarity on time in order to be sort of a better fiduciary responsibility to the fleet fund. He can probably answer the question better than I, but if it goes, say, beyond next year, if we're still a year out and we're still not sure, do we want to dispose of the property? If so, for how much and to who? Then it's probably going to be time to start rolling that up into the overall stormwater utility and making some decisions to move forward. So Jim, I don't know, do you want to add further detail or did I misstate anything?
Mayor Bagley, members of council, Jim Golden, Chief Financial Officer. I think the only thing about bringing an interfund loan is that we typically will designate a time frame for when we're going to repay it by. So we would want to make sure we put something in there. I think based on what Dale's telling us, we might be able to put a few years out. And if for some reason that doesn't come to pass, we could refinance at that point in time. This is the fleet fund can afford this. There's a certain, I would think, we don't have any actually set limits on how much loans we can do, but at the same time, I look at the fund balance and want to make sure that it's able to finance the annual purchases that need to take place. So this is kind of putting us close to maybe where I might consider a limit between this and the loans that we do have outstanding from loans to the golf fund and the general fund. So at some point, we would want to make sure that there's a repayment tied to it and not just indefinitely into the future.
I'm not sure that gives me enough detail to determine how to vote.
So if I can jump in, I think if we put a time frame, so say 5 years, and we said we have 5 years to do this, that gives us time to move through the visioning process to see if there's interest in what we're wanting to do. And then, and frankly, for me, the 2-year mark is really in my head to say, if we haven't really figured something out, then we've got to figure the repayment out. And then we can look at structuring it different ways. The issue that we have at hand today is a timing issue in terms of the project.
Mm-hmm.
The Fleet Fund has the ability to do it. You set the time frame at 5 years. If that changes and we need to facilitate something else, then we would refinance it at that point in terms of the payment structure.
So can we go back to the slide with the A, B, and C? Yeah. So a vote for scenario A does not necessarily mean disposal of these properties now, or it doesn't
Correct.
necessarily,
No.
it means it. I have trouble voting for anything that says timing is uncertain if we have an interest in the outcome.
So, Mayor Bagley and Councilmember Martin, I think what the reason we're saying that is because it is uncertain, certainly to staff, and I think to me it's a timing and it's a what does the city envision ultimately doing it in particular the rural mobile home park site. So
yeah,
let me jump in to answer your. There will not be uncertain in timing when we bring the loan back to you, because we will have to have timing within that loan document if you choose scenario A. So if we chose scenario A, we would set the timing, and I've got to really look at the numbers with Jim and Dale, but when it comes back for you to vote on, it'll be 5 years. And that'll be
on the outside.
And that's the outside. That's very certain in what we have to do. If council chooses not to dispose of the property at a future date, then we will come in and we will have to restructure the loan with the appropriate repayment component to it.
Or restating the motion in scenario A is we've got $3.74 million right now in property that could be used to pay this gap, or we can increase rates by 5% and pay it back over 10 years.
but that's not what the motion said.
The motion
it's
is
asking us to choose between those two.
correct. So the
And
motion is
the motion is to
scenario
choose
A.
A. And choosing A means that no loan would be taken out, or no loan will be extended. Is that correct? Because, see, that's what, I'm not sure what entailed in a vote for A.
So A creates directs us to bring back a loan for $3.6 million with the
Yeah, no, I know
repayment
that.
being the sale of the property. If council decides at a later date not to do that, we would then need to restructure the loan in order to bring that payment. And at that point, the options that council would have in terms of restructuring it would be, over time, we could refund it with stormwater dollars, which would necessitate a rate increase. We could create the repayment via a general fund allocation, which would do the same thing. There are different options that we would look at. One of the scenarios was an affordable housing component. The Affordable Housing Fund could purchase it. There are different ways that we could bring that back, but the direction is to establish the loan based on the sale of the properties. That's essentially the collateral for the loan in this case.
Okay. So, in other words, it would be possible to give direction to proceed with scenario A now, and at some future time, we could switch.
Correct. The land's a collateral.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you. That's what I was trying to find out.
All right, there's 3 people in the queue. Is there anybody who wants to speak against the motion? Councilmember Peck?
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. A funding source could also be the collateral against the loan as well. Is that true or not true? For example,
I'm not sure I understand.
let me just go through these. Scenario A, I don't want to sell the properties. I think that this is an asset for our city. We have an incredible urban planner. We have a vision for South Main, so I don't want to sell those properties. Scenario B, the rate increase will not sunset after 10 years. When you increase a fee 5%, none of us are going to be here in 10 years. Nobody's going to remember what this was for. It's going to be in perpetuity. We never decrease fees. So I'm against that one because we can't hold anybody's feet to the fire to decrease that fee after it's paid off. The other one, scenario C, no, we can't delay this construction. But I have an idea for scenario D. And that's why I asked about the funding source. We used to have a $2 utility flood fee on the utility bill, right?
As I recall, it was a $2 fee that was going into parks.
Well, we still have
and
that.
We lowered it. Well, it was 4, and we lowered it down to 2.
Okay, so
2 was the flood recovery aspect of it.
Exactly.
For city parks.
Exactly, it's the flood recovery. I think that we should bring that back as a $2 flood recovery on the utility bill and have that basically for this, go ahead and take the loan from the fleet fund, have a $2 or higher fee on the utility bill, keep the properties, and then when this is paid off, we could continue that. We could probably pay it off before 10 years if we did that, but continue that to complete the RSVP to Hover, which is unfunded. And why can't we do that?
Mayor Bagley and Councilmember Peck, I'm certainly not here to say you can't do that. Certainly you can. The one thing I would suggest would be that the disposition of the properties, the issue that I think we're dealing with is the funds that are currently owning it within the city, within all the different funds of the city. Mm-hmm. And so in other words, you could retain ownership of it as a city asset, as a city property, but you may put that, you may pay for that out of a different fund. So in other words, if it changes character and becomes an art district, for instance, you may want to pay for that out of some other funding mechanism, either through the general fund or the public improvement fund. I think the issue we're trying to deal with is you own these 2 particular properties with a utility, with a stormwater utility that is really set up not to own excess properties. It's really set up to manage the storm drainage within the city. I think the $2 would generate about how much? How much per year? So it's going to generate $950 a year. So that would get it paid back within a similar time frame. Yep. Which is why we have alternative D.
Exactly.
But the other thing I would say is alternative A, even though it's relying, at least in theory, in order to get the initial loan from the fleet fund, I wouldn't necessarily consider that as a mandate that you have to sell the properties. Really all it's doing is helping us avoid having to hit the pause button to keep this project moving forward while we take additional time as a council and as a community to really decide what we want to do with these properties. And so if you decide at the end of the day that you want to hold them all, that could be an outcome. And then you could then turn around and initiate exactly what you're saying, Councilmember Peck.
But the whole point of this is not, it is to get funding for the RSVP. Mm-hmm. It is not to sell the properties, it's to get the funding.
It is to get
So
the funding.
this is a funding source, and my question was, if we have that funding source, forget the properties, the funding source of the utility fee, would that not be collateral for that loan? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay, so then that would collateralize the loan. We could keep the properties until we decide what to do with it. And we would also have that funding source for the RSVP to Hover, from Hover to even airport. And you would not have to come back to us again and say, we can't fund this. It would be a part.
Yeah, that would not be enough to probably close the full
It's
gap.
about a $30 million gap. We would have to look at that in
That would be-
relationship to a timing, but could
Exactly.
it fill
But
a
it wouldn't
portion of
be
it?
but it wouldn't be another thing we would have to go to the public for. We could say, should we continue this funding source to complete the RSVP to airport or as
Correct.
part of it? So that's the way I would go. Keep those properties until we really decide what we want to do with them. Fund it through a utility fee, which would not be part of Tabor because it's not a tax.
Well, to me, I think that's essentially similar to scenario B. You're just doing a different mechanism other than the stormwater rate. You're just.
Well, we're going to increase those rates. Dale just said next year he's coming back to us in 2020 to increase those rates again, so.
I think and Councilmember Peck, I think it could be, your idea is fine. It certainly is an option. In my head, it's the same customers that we're talking about. And so if you increase a storm rate, you're taking that money from them. Or if you add a $2 fee onto their bill, you're taking the money. And so I guess at the end of the day, it's what council feels is the most appropriate way to generate funds to complete a flood control project.
That's my suggestion, and I would like to vote on it, but we already have a vote on the floor. Can I amend it? Because if scenario A passes, then we're not directing staff to consider this option.
Well, we can.
And so I don't know.
Yeah, we've got a motion on the floor, and so once we vote, if that fails, then.
But if it doesn't fail, is my point, then would staff not look at this option?
You could always make a motion, and we could charge, you can make the motion to raise additional fees, and we can, once that motion's made, we can discuss and debate that, if you'd like.
Okay.
All right, Dr. Waters?
Thanks, Mayor Bagley. So how urgent is the decision-making process for you? You need a decision tonight on this, or?
Mayor Bagley and Councilmember Waters, yeah, that's why we're here tonight, because if you give us direction to come back with a loan, we need to get that prepared and executed so that we have the funding. I don't believe we can even go to bid unless we've got funding secured.
All right, so we need to act on it tonight. So some follow-on questions. We have options on these properties, I would assume, to sell them or lease them if we wanted to. And we could, at some point in time, you could lease them as part of a public-private partnership or something like that. What are as other development occurs around the transit hub, with the First and Main Station being kind of an anchor, and as our visioning process begins to bring to life possibilities, what are the possibilities that the appraised values that we've seen on these properties tonight are going to change?
They're going to increase.
I would think so.
They're going to increase. Yeah.
So a loan that buys us time to see some development occur potentially is a pretty good investment in the long run.
Your
it would seem to
collateral
me,
could be increasing in
as the value of the land we own grows because of the development that's occurring, and then we have options to sell or lease. Personally, for two other council members, when my concern back in November when we saw lots in 5 on an agenda for sale, you had talked to us in August about remnant properties. It took me a while to make this connection that those properties were part of that list of remnant properties back in August 21st that we talked about. My concern on that evening, and it would be on any evening going forward if we saw the sale of property, wouldn't be the sale. It would be the sale without clarity on what we expect to see developed, right? So with the right RFP, a developer saying, you tell me what you want to build, or, you know, we say to the community, to the developers, what we want to see, and then give them a chance to bid.
Sure.
For me, I don't have personally, I just want, you know, to be on record, I don't have qualms about selling the property so long as I know what we're going to get as a result. And it's likely, you know, that's going to be a different council that deals with that anyway, because it's going to be far enough in the future. But if I were part of that decision, I'm not reticent about the sale. I'm not willing to sell it without knowing what we're getting, and that it's going to help advance the vision or move towards the vision that we're in the process of creating right now, that the community is going to help us shape at the end of the day, right? This is at the very beginning of that process. In the August 21st discussion, there were multiple references to the Royal Mobile Home property, and that we were going to come back and talk about that, right? Now we haven't, so I'm not certain. I know that it's like nothing's happened right between now and then. There's a ton of things that have happened between now and then, so a lot of reasons why we might not have. Is there at some point in time, obviously the reason you signaled to us half a dozen times on August 21st, we're going to come back and talk about the Royal Mobile Home property, is because there are issues there.
Correct.
That we need to drill down on. It's kind of unrelated to the decision tonight, but it is related long-term to what we do with that property. When do you envision that conversation occurring?
So I think that's tying into the work that council has participated in, some of the conversations on the goals related to B3 and B4, and really we need to continue developing that process, take it to the community to get additional community input. That I think once we bring that, and as we indicated at the council goal setting session, we're going to try to bring that into alignment with the work that Aaron's doing. And once we really get a better understanding from the public feedback on the Main Street program and on these other conversations, I think that's going to be the opportunity to bring it back.
So it's not something else that we should know about that property. It's as these ideas or these conversations converge, it shapes what that conversation is.
Absolutely.
It begins to focus what we can do with, because that's a prime piece of property.
Defines the possibilities.
When you see what comes out of the floodplain.
And the transit station, and really where that is going to end up and how that fits into this broader vision, is really going to be closely associated with that conversation. And so I think part of the problem is, you know, we could put together an RFP, but we really need to learn more, because we've seen
I wasn't suggesting we do that. That we preempt, that we.
No, there's things we need to wait on.
I'm just saying that when the time comes, because it's not like we're going to be the developers of that property unless it's in a public-private partnership, and then our role would be to be making a sweetheart deal to somebody on the land to build what we want, right? As a source of, as a cultural addition to culture, as an engine of growth, those kinds of things. All right, thank you.
Councilmember Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. First of all, a clarifying question. With the appraised values as presented, are those the as-is appraised values, or are they?
Yes.
Okay. So ideally, after the LOMAR is approved, that would bring these properties out of the floodplain, correct?
It will bring it out. So Nick is telling me the appraisal already assumes these properties are coming out of the floodplain, because
okay, so they're made under the hypothetical condition.
That's a secret that's not being well kept.
Okay. Well, thank you. So in concept, then, according to current market rates, that's what we would expect to see. But if we're talking about when they do actually come out of floodplain, which wouldn't be for another year or two.
Couple years. Mm-hmm.
So that's not exactly a reliable appraised number.
Could change, right? Could change just over time, right?
So, you know, I mean, I do tend to agree with the scenario A funding mechanism, but I would definitely not be interested in necessarily disposition until those properties actually came out of the floodplain, just to obviously see the highest return on value for the properties, ideally speaking. So that's just where I stand. Thank you.
Councilmember Finley.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. I'll be brief. I am also in favor of A, and we'll be voting that way. The details could be debated all night, but we don't need to do that. We just need to give you a direction, and I think that's a good one.
All right, all right, Councilmember Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. Two things. One is I got a letter from a resident today, and it was about the utility bill. And that resident, who is not a low-income resident, because one of the things that they were most concerned about was the terms of their net metering, which sort of implies that they are at least moderately financially have a certain amount of agency. But they wanted detailed explanations of the art in public places fee. They would, every $1, $2, $3 thing was a big deal. And knowing that a full quarter of our population is at least at the point where a $1, $2, $3 fee does in fact matter and potentially affects their ability to pay their utility bill month to month. I am concerned about adding another fee, given both the recent evidence about the financial means of our residents and the very recent evidence of the level of concern that even people who are not financially stressed have with that utility bill. It seems to me that scenario A is misleading in that it's repaid with sale of properties. What it really means is collateralize a loan with that property, which is a much less scary way of thinking about it, because as Mr. Dominguez said, we still have 5 years to figure out how that property is going to be disposed of or how that loan is going to be repaid. Given the truth of that, if you can confirm that statement, that rephrasing that I just made, I think I would support scenario A.
All right, so the chair's.
Can you confirm it?
All right,
Did I say the right thing?
Yeah, but let's don't, so people are hopping back in the queue. So there's currently no motion on the table for.
Yes, there is.
No, not for scenario D. I know there's, what I'm saying is scenario A. Is there any other comments? I mean, because my gut tells me that there's probably 6 of us that are going to vote for this. We've got a long evening ahead of us.
I just want to know the answer to the question I asked before we start rephrasing motions.
So I think the answer to, and I'm going to have Jim jump in too, I think the answer to your question is yes, but if the properties are sold, that has to go to repay the loan sooner. So if in 2 years we finish this, here's what we want to do, and there's an opportunity and we sell it, the loan will be structured in a way where the proceeds go to pay back that loan. You can't use them for something else.
Okay, but we could restructure the loan before we sell the property.
Correct. But you would have to have a funding source. There has to be a repayment mechanism in this.
Always associated with the loan.
Correct.
Got it. Thank you.
Mayor Bagley, members of council, if I could just throw in, so we don't ever issue any type of debt, whether it be obviously external debt, but also internal type of debt without some plan for repayment and a revenue source to collect on it from. So when this was brought to my attention and said, hey, can we do a fleet fund loan? My discussion with the public works staff was how's it going to get repaid? What are the options? And that's what they brought to you. I would not bring you a loan document that doesn't have a repayment plan in it. I wouldn't recommend that, and we've never drafted one like that and wouldn't. So,
all right, Mayor Pro Tem.
We know you wouldn't, Jim.
That'd be crazy.
I don't mean to be preachy here, but I was elected during the middle of the flood, and Councilwoman Finley and Mayor Bagley were on, and we've been trying to finish this work ever since. And that really is, whether it's the animals along the river or the people along the river or the whole town, We've got to do that, and we have to be able to finance it with all this government funding that you've listed, and there is a time limit on that. I'd also like to say that on the 1140 Boston, there already is property there, there already are buildings there, and they have operated in good faith with the expectation that they would be able to buy them. So at the very least, I think that should be something we can deal with right away. And as we've said, the other property, the Royal Mobile Home Park, it is up for some discussion about what's the best use of that. Anyway, so I would like to have us vote.
All right, let's go ahead and vote. The chair is going to restate the motion for the record. All right, the motion is that we direct the city council give direction to staff that they proceed with scenario A to fund $3.6 million gap from the with a loan from the fleet fund to be repaid with the sale of the two properties that were presented in that presentation. Period, full stop. The sale of which is uncertain because we don't know exactly what's going to happen. That is the motion. It's been seconded. Let's vote. All right, that passes 6-1 with Councilmember Peck against. All right, let's move on to the next one. 11B, a review and discussion of the draft metrics and measurements for advanced Longmont. Oh, sure. Oh, yes, Councilmember Peck.
Thank you. The reason that one of the reasons I'm not voting for that is because when it was brought to us in August, you already had a buyer for that property. Someone that was interested in buying those properties, because I remember the comment was that so-and-so was going to be very unhappy about that vote. So just
not those two properties. That was the property over on Boston and Maine.
Okay, so I'm going to move that we direct staff to use the fleet fund for financing the Resilient St. Vrain projects that they need to, with a funding source of a fee on our utility bill of approximately $2 to fund that, to pay back the fleet fund. If that is a problem for our residents, I would like to also include in that we can sunset the park maintenance fee, which does not have a sunset on it, and it's been going for a very long time. So that's my motion, that we fund it through a utility fee for ongoing funding.
Okay, the motion doesn't get a second, but Councilmember Peck, thank you. All right, let's go on to 11B, general business, review and discuss draft metrics and measurements for Advanced Longmont 2.0 strategic plan for economic development.
This is a longer presentation, so if council wants a break.
All right, let's go ahead and
this would be a good opportunity.
Yeah, let's go ahead and take a break.
That's okay.
Let's get going again. I got my potato chips. I'm good.
No, it's fine.
I don't know. That's a.
Oh, I actually have it right here. Morgan, I have it right here.
I don't know if I can commit to that. I did. I know you can't. I'm going to eat half that package. All right, let's turn the time over to Jessica Erickson.
Good evening.
Yeah, it's all your time.
Now? Good evening, Mayor Bagley and council members. Thank you for your time this evening. I'm Jessica Erickson, President and CEO of the Longmont Economic Development Partnership, and we're here this evening to present a progress update on Advanced Longmont 2.0, which is the update of the comprehensive collaborative citywide economic development strategy. There is a little bit of a, I think, misnomer in the agenda that you received, in that we are not quite to the point of metrics and measures. We have completed the market assessment, the industry cluster analysis, and some of the goal and priority setting that we want to present to you this evening as a progress update. Metrics and measures are part of some of the next steps that we're going to be doing, so just didn't want you to be misled on that. We have provided you a hard copy of what will be presented to you this evening. We're going to be presenting you a lot of information relatively quickly, as quickly as we possibly can, while having it still be meaningful. And just want to make you aware that the information that's contained in the presentation does build upon itself. So starting with market assessment, that informs target industry analysis, that then ultimately informs the goals and the priorities. And so we certainly invite you to interrupt at any point in time with questions or comments, but just keeping in mind again that it is information that builds upon itself, and so likely questions that are created early in the presentation will be answered later in the presentation. And so we have actually, based on a wise suggestion by one of your colleagues, provided you with a note card as attached to the presentation where you can write down some of your questions, and if they get answered throughout the presentation, check those off, and any that are left at the end, we would welcome you to ask those questions of us at the end. And then the last thing I'm going to talk about before I turn it over to Morgan, who's going to actually provide the presentation this evening, is really what we're looking for from you with this presentation this evening in terms of feedback and kind of the lenses through which we want you to digest or consume this information as we're presenting it, and then we'll come back and ask these questions of you at the end of the presentation. One of those questions being, from what you see during the presentation, is there anything within that lacks clarity, that isn't easily digestible for you, or you think might not be easily digestible for the public, or any terminology or concepts that we use relative to economic development that need to be better defined for you and for your constituents? Secondly, if you have any immediate concerns with alignment or synergy with the council work plan, or barriers to future adoption by City Council of Advanced Longmont 2.0 as the city's economic development strategy, we will be coming back to you, hopefully at a later date, to ask you to adopt this plan as the city's economic development strategy. And then finally, we'll be asking you, how do you want to be involved in implementation of the strategy once it's completed, both individually and collectively? So as a body, and each of you individually, if you have specific areas of interest that you would like to be more involved in as we start the implementation process once the overall plan is done. So if you can keep those in mind, we'll be asking you those again at the end of the presentation. And so with that, I will turn it over to Morgan Smith, who is Longmont EDP's Director of Strategy and Collaboration, and has done much of the work to get us here to where we're at with Advanced Longmont 2.0 today.
Thanks, Jessica. Figure out the best way to keep this microphone on me. Let's see here. We already jumped in Mr. Mayor, council members, thank you for having me this evening. I'm really excited to help share all of the work that we've done over the last many months and the update for Advanced Longmont 2.0. But before we get into the meat of the strategy tonight and some of the data that we've used to help inform our strategy, I just wanted to kind of go over a quick primer or a refresher to some of our work in economic development. So we think about two general categories in our economy. We have our local businesses and our primary businesses. And our local economy, our grocers, our pizza stores, really there's lots of different businesses in our local economy, but mostly people who are getting most of their revenue from inside the city. So when we go and buy produce from a grocery store, the grocery store uses that revenue to pay its employees, and then those employees go buy a slice of pizza, and then the pizza shop pays its employees with that revenue, and on and around the circle it goes. And that's wonderful. It's incredibly important to help our local economy grow, to help Longmont grow. Our primary industry allows us to find new sources of revenue from outside the city for our economy. So primary industry gets more than half of their revenue as a company from outside the city or outside the region. And our primary businesses, as you can see here, are injecting new sources of revenue into our economy. And once again, it multiplies back through our local businesses as the employees at any one of our primary employers are spending money in local retail or at any one of our other local businesses. So over time, if I can, I'm not entirely sure. Just want to make sure I can advance these slides effectively. Yay. So over time, economic development has focused on a few distinct areas. The first being primary industry development, that we're attracting primary businesses with marketing and policy tools to our city and economy here. That's pretty straightforward. That's traditional economic development. We've also focused on entrepreneurship, growing startups and local businesses here in our city to build local community wealth, a tax revenue base for our city, and to really grow our own, to help tell Longmont's story of our entrepreneurial ecosystem. As of late, economic development has also focused on placemaking. So finding places for art and culture, green spaces, social amenities, to merge those things together in places that people want to congregate in and people want to live in. And so economic development as placemaking is an important emerging trend in economic development throughout the nation, and something that we've done particularly, I think, well here in Longmont as well in Colorado. And recently, and with Advanced Longmont 1.0, we tackled collaboration. So economic development is collaboration, being working across a lot of different stakeholders to create new programs and initiatives, whether that's an advisory committee for local business, a prospectus for an opportunity zone, or any other kind of specific or particular project. What I want to present to you tonight is the next evolution in economic development and something that's crucial to our implementation of Advanced Longmont 2.0, and that's collective impact. So this is problem solving across different organizations with shared priorities. And this is a framework that allows us to bring people together in a structured way to achieve socioeconomic change. It sounds maybe a little bit like collaboration, I understand. The difference between collaboration and collective impact is that collaboration tends to be one-off. We identify one project and then maybe we go in different directions after that project has completed. Collective impact is working together towards shared goals, so we're moving in the same direction continuously. And a collective impact process tends to have 4 discrete, really important parts to defining our strategy. And I want to walk you through these tonight. And this is our integral update to Advanced Longmont for Advanced Longmont 2.0. So that's analyzing the landscape, and then we'll talk about initiating dialogue and our common agenda and implementation. But first, analyzing the landscape. We completed a comprehensive market assessment. And in doing so, we're inspired by this lovely quote from Amy Liu, who's an economist at the Brookings Institution, and she says that top-line growth doesn't ensure bottom-line prosperity. The point of this being that no matter how good our growth metrics are, it may not be shared among different sectors of our population, whether that's by occupation, by race or ethnicity, by socioeconomic status, etc. And so in completing our market assessment, we use 3 different lenses: growth, prosperity, and inclusion. And these lenses allowed us to take different snapshots of our local economy. I can tell you, we have a lot of data. I don't have the time, nor do I think you all have the patience to hear all of the data that we did. So I want to share with you some important snapshots. And just to preface this, that there's a lot more data than what I'm presenting to you tonight. And all of that data has informed what we're talking about later in this presentation. So the first, unsurprisingly, is that we have a low unemployment rate in Longmont. We averaged about 3% in 2018. This chart shows Longmont, Boulder County, and some other regional, so Denver and Colorado, all kind of grouped together, pretty low. The main point is that we have a much tighter labor market than the rest of the nation. We're outperforming the rest of the nation. We have a very, very tight labor market here. So that's typically a good indicator. That means that if somebody is out there looking for work, there's a pretty good chance you'll find it. That's what a tight labor market creates. And to accompany that, we also have real GDP growth in the region. This data is not available for Longmont, but for the Boulder MSA. And real GDP growth is adjusted for inflation. So in 2017, 2018 data will be available soon, we saw about 3% real growth in our economy. So we're really growing strong. And importantly, as of late, we've been beating the national trends as well. These are things we already know. This data just helps enlighten us and helps ground our work in evidence-based economic development. So Boulder's been growing about 3%. These are a couple snapshots from growth. There's a lot else that goes into this. But just to jump to another snapshot from prosperity. Instead of just looking at growth metrics, what does our median family income look like? So this is an estimate for Longmont and then some figures for other regions across the board in Northern Front Range. What we see is that Longmont and other Northern Front Range communities have a higher median family income than the rest of the nation. So somehow the growth that we're experiencing here is benefiting our families. And the families that are living here currently in Colorado tend to be at least slightly better off than the rest of the nation on median, right, or on average. So that's one snapshot from prosperity. We also, of course, looked at inclusion, something greatly important to our work in economic development. Longmont is almost 26% Hispanic, and that's a higher percentage as a community than Denver, a Colorado average, or the national average. So we have a strong population, something, of course, we all know, of Hispanic or Latino individuals here in Longmont. And we took this data and then looked at it in lots of different ways. We looked at poverty, we looked at job status, working status, we looked at founding startups and lots of different outcomes. One, just to share, is about educational attainment. So 90% of white individuals in Longmont have a high school degree or higher, while 61% of Hispanic or Latino individuals in Longmont have a high school degree or higher. So we began to see that there are some disparities in outcomes, that there are differences between different racial and ethnic communities here in Longmont. And this data informs some of the strategies that you're about to see in a hot second. So that is the first little swath through on our market assessment, analyzing the landscape, looking at what's going on in our community. The second part of this actually has to do with industry clusters, and this is primarily focused on our work in primary industry, economic development, attracting in primary industry employers to our economy. So between the time Advanced Longmont 1.0 was initially drafted and ratified in 2013 and 2014, some very smart people got together at the Federal Economic Development Administration in Harvard and asked a couple questions. What industries are concentrated where? And what industries are linked to other industries? So not just where are competitive strengths for a community in certain industries, but also if we try and target a particular industry, biopharmaceuticals or marketing, design, and publishing, what is required for that industry to succeed? What is it linked with in across the nation? So they created, and this is somewhat overwhelming at first, a kind of crazy chart that looks like this. And each one of these circles is a cluster of industries. So up on the screen, it's difficult to read, but on the handouts, you'll see there's different clusters, whether it's printing, biopharmaceuticals, IT, lighting, agriculture, so on and so forth. And this methodology allows us to look at our competitive strengths as a community, to track what kind of industries are linked with what other industries. So as economic developers, we can pursue the right people and grow our economy by attracting in new or developing our own primary industry employers. So we took this methodology and then went along the way and charted out what industries do we have strengths in as a community, which ones have been performing well, which ones are projected to perform well, and then cleaned up all of that and created 4 targeted industry clusters. So these are the industries that we'll be targeting moving forward in primary industry development. And that's smart manufacturing, business catalysts, food and beverage, and knowledge creation and deployment. And because this is so instrumental to our work as economic developers and to an economic development strategy, I just want to sit with these industry clusters for a moment and dive in a little bit deeper. So in smart manufacturing, here in Longmont, there's about 2,200 jobs in 2018 in this cluster. And this measure, LQ, location quotient, is a measure of relative to national concentration. So we have 6.72 LQ location quotient, which means that the jobs that we have in this cluster are 6.7 times as concentrated in Longmont compared to the national average for a city of the same size. This is a huge competitive strength for our city. We have a lot of industries and a lot of jobs in smart manufacturing. Over the next 5 years, it's projected to grow 2%, which is pretty good, and the average earnings for jobs in this cluster is about $96,000. By targeting this cluster, our goal is that we're a national center for Industry 4.0, designing and manufacturing the next frontier of advanced technology. So these are the people making cool optic devices, lasers, any other kind of smart manufacturing tech exists in this cluster. Business catalysts, on the other hand, create the B2B infrastructure. So the specialized computer programmers, data processors, any kind of specialized consultants or technical services compose our business catalysts. They're the people who come in to a local or a primary employer and say, how can we help make you do business better? And in this cluster, there's there's a little over 3,900 jobs, and we're just above the national average of concentration. But over the next 5 years, we're projected to grow 13% in this cluster, which is a huge amount of growth of jobs. And the average earnings are almost $100,000. The goal is that we're home to a comprehensive business support sector that catalyzes primary and local industry growth. So by targeting this sector, we're supporting all other businesses in our economy since they compose our business infrastructure. Food and beverage, pretty straightforward. We have about 700 jobs in 2018. This is almost 5 times the national average of concentration of jobs in this kind of cluster. Over the next 5 years, we're projected to grow 15% in this cluster, and the average earnings are about $51,000. And just as a quick note, this does not include Smuckers. So, a huge competitive asset. Longmont, the goal being that Longmont offers world-class food and beverage manufacturing, production, and service. Again, I think this cluster's pretty straightforward. And then the last is knowledge creation and deployment, something that links in well with council work plans and some of the visioning sessions that have been occurring, but also represents a competitive asset to our community. So there are almost 1,900 jobs in this sector. That's almost twice the national average of concentration. Over the next 5 years, it's got some good growth, 5%, but the average earnings of these jobs are almost $128,000 for the average earner. The goal being that we're a national center for R&D and deployment in engineering, physical, and life sciences. So these are the private R&D labs, the folks who are tinkering with the crazy next step. There's a nice little linkage, by the way, between this one and smart manufacturing. We have R&D labs creating the next technology, spinning them off into smart manufacturing businesses that helps bolster other clusters' growth. So that is a brief look at our industry clusters and our targeted industries moving forward. And then the last part, we're not through yet, of analyzing the landscape has to do with our focus areas. So in Advanced Longmont 1.0, we identified 5 focus areas for collaboration and for economic development work. And that's business climate, education and workforce development, entrepreneurship and innovation, real estate and infrastructure, and quality of life. I don't have the time, once again, to present to you all the things, so I just want to provide a fun little snapshot from our real estate and infrastructure work. And this has to do with commercial real estate space for our primary employers. So this is data we track internally. And currently, Longmont has roughly a 10% vacancy rate among all potential primary employer property. So any kind of office, flex industrial, warehousing space, anything like that, about 10% of that is currently on the market. So that's almost 850,000 square feet. The issue, and what is very interesting about this data-based approach, is that we know that 400,000 of that vacancy, so almost half, is at the Max facility, and another 100,000 is at the 1601 Dry Creek facility, which has a few different companies in that space. So when we look over time, this is vacancy rate in Longmont over time. 10.2% is where we're currently at. Once the Max goes away, we drop down to there, and without the Max and the Dry Creek facility, we drop down to there. So if we want to do an effective job bringing in primary industry employers, this is a key priority. And you'll see this emerge once again in the strategies, the agenda that I'll be presenting to you tonight. So this is just one example of how data is informing our strategies and obviously showing some immediate concerns and long-term concerns for our community. So that was analyzing the landscape. There's a lot more that I could present and spend time on, but there's a lot more to get through as well. So over the last 2 to 3 months, we spent a lot of hours with our Advanced Longmont partners, other community stakeholders, private sector leaders, talking about emergent priorities. So we put together working groups in each of these focus areas and began to ask questions about, okay, what's next? What do we need to address? What do we hope to achieve? And trying to find all the emergent priorities for economic development in our city. What became clear is that sometimes it's a little more blurred than in individual buckets. So take the issue of attracting millennials to Longmont. We want to bring in young talent to live here. Well, as it happens, that's typically an intersection of finding affordable housing, having good social amenities, having good paying jobs. And from our initial framework, that's also the intersection between real estate and infrastructure, quality of life, and business climate. And so we had separate working groups trying to tackle the same problems, but not necessarily aligning themselves effectively. And so that brings us to talking about creating a common agenda in our collective impact framework. So moving forward in Advanced Longmont 2.0, we're focused on updating our focus areas to align better with our shared economic challenges as a community. And that's talent, place, industry, connectivity, and impact. Impact, of course, as a working group informs the whole strategy, the whole thinking behind collective impact, but also it allows us to align organizations better. So I want to take the time in each of these focus areas to talk about the goals and priorities that we have that have come out of discussions that have been informed by the data of which I showed you just a little bit. And then after that, we'll talk a little bit about implementation. So in talent, let's just start with talent. The goal of our talent work is that we're successfully recruiting and retaining new needed talent while building an industry and future responsive talent infrastructure. And so we have some emerging priorities: building industry relevant talent pipelines to respond to current demands, designing effective career pathways to meet future demands, and then inviting new talent into our community from around the nation. So a talent marketing strategy may come out of this, talking with our school district and how we're linking in with our community colleges. This is all the kind of work, but these are the top line goal and then some emergent priorities in this focus area. Second is place. So our goal in place is that Longmont is a vibrant and amenity-rich community that offers a diverse mixture of options for play, food, culture, and unique experiences. I think some of this language may sound familiar as it aligns well both with Council Work Plan and Vision Longmont, lots of other strategies in our community. We're trying not to reinvent the wheel here. We're trying to embed our economic development strategy into what's already going on. So the priorities being that we're creating engaging and colorful urban centers, especially in downtown, developing a vibrant river corridor as a strong community asset, which is already something that we have a visioning session going on, and then ensuring residential affordability for both current and future residents. These are top priorities in placemaking and thinking about Longmont as a place. In industry, the goal is that primary, local, and startup companies in Longmont thrive with a collaborative business environment and easy access to financing, real estate, and mentorship. So as you can see, some of our data is already being embedded into these strategies that you've seen tonight. So pursuing strategic growth in each of those clusters is a top priority, of course, particularly for us as an economic development organization, but then also constructing a powerful, no wrong door ecosystem for all businesses. The analogy that we're currently using is something like coordinated entry, but for our entrepreneurs. And then lastly, attracting new real estate investment to meet primary industry and startup needs. So like the commercial data that you saw earlier, this is certainly a top priority for us as a community. Connectivity, we're almost through. Longmont is the gold standard for multimodal transit, offering innovative modes and points of access throughout the city, region, and the nation. And so this makes sense. It kind of goes down the list. We have a comprehensive intracity multimodal transit system, however that looks, connecting Longmont to the region with an accessible transportation system, and then investing in the future development of the Vance Brand Airport as an integral infrastructure asset. These are the the top priorities in some of our connectivity work. And then lastly, impact. Impact's informed everything that you've seen so far. That we're nationally, so the goal is that we're nationally recognized as a city that solves problems together. We unite organizations, resources, and people from all sectors to implement what matters. So the priorities being, we're transforming our work into a world-class collective impact group. We're increasing funding for economic development and business development to achieve those goals, and we're leveraging private sector leadership. This is a cross-sector work, so we need to make sure we're leveraging private sector leadership as we move forward. So that's our common agenda. I know I'm really working through, sprinting on this presentation, but I want to honor your time tonight, and I want to make sure we have some time to work through some of your questions. So lastly is about implementation. We have all this wonderful data. We have all these great goals and priorities. What does it look like moving forward? And this is progress to date, of course. Collective impact is not something the EDP dreamed up one night. It is a national model for how communities can work better together to address common and shared problems. So that's just, this graphic is just like, hey, look, it's a national model. But really what it looks like in Longmont is this. We have a community network, action-focused partners, people in the public sector, people in the private sector, whether it's CEOs of businesses, council members, board members of nonprofit organizations, to just private citizens who are engaged, who can and are willing and able to work to implement those goals and priorities. So collective impact brings these people together in working groups. As you can see, a talent working group. And at that working group, we'll obviously have our main partners in our community college and our school district and others, but then also it provides us an opportunity to bring in maybe a statewide partner like CareerWise that works on apprenticeships, or any other kind of organization or company that can help implement those priorities. Then the Advanced Longmont Partners, which currently is our partnership group among nonprofits and other organizations and institutions in our city, becomes a steering committee to the whole strategy, that we're implementing and monitoring the whole strategy across all of the different working groups. And then the Economic Development Partnership is the backbone to the work. Not that we are implementing every single particular thing that you just saw, but that we're supporting organizations in working together so that we're addressing our shared goals and priorities and addressing the opportunities and challenges that we have as a community. So that is collective impact, the next evolution in economic development. And at this time, I know that was a sprint, I'm open to take any questions and comments and concerns from all of you. And thank you very much.
Councilmember Martin.
First, I'd like to say I just loved that presentation. Especially I liked how well you articulated the goals, and in comparison with the 1.0 presentations that we've seen, I think it's a much more astute recognition of where Longmont's strengths lie. I do have a question.
Of course.
You identified the average annual earnings of the several impact industry clusters that you identified. It seems to me that something is that there's a bunch of earners left out of that, because if that was it, we'd be a much richer city than we actually are. So what percentage of the earners in the city are included in your clusters, and can you characterize the people who are left out?
Sure. So to do some quick mental math, I think we get to about somewhere around 6,000 to 8,000 jobs across all of our industry clusters, and we are currently about 52,000 of our employees, so whatever that, or 52,000 people are employed in our city. So we have whatever that fraction looks like. We have, or the point about, or the methodology behind industry clusters is not to capture all industries in our city and then say we'll target all industries in our city. In fact, our economic development work and entrepreneurship and primary industry development elsewhere allows us to help people in all different occupations. The methodology, or the point of target industries, is that we're telling the world, this is what we're good at. Come to Longmont. You have a bunch of other people in our ecosystem that you'll also benefit working in. So that's why there's a smaller share of jobs in industry clusters compared to our employment totals in the city. And I see Jessica at my shoulder, so I'm sure she has more to say.
I do. So, and I think I agree with everything that Morgan just said, but also want to add that our target industry cluster strategy, which is the case with target industry cluster strategies, is about primary industry. And so when you think about primary industry, I think he said there are 6,000 jobs currently within those four targeted industry clusters, which represents more than a third of all primary industry jobs within the city. And so that's part of it. And then, of course, when you're looking at only primary industry, you're not looking at local business, service sector businesses that are generally the lower wage paying jobs. The benefit to those jobs and those individuals of a target industry cluster strategy is bringing in talent and workforce that's earning the wages that you saw up here, that has the disposable income to spread and distribute within the local economy to support the success of our local businesses, hopefully ability to increase wages and hire more people and reinvest in the community and those kinds of things.
Councilmember Peck?
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. You kind of answered one of my questions about the food and beverage when you said the average salary was $51K. What level of employee were we talking about? Management?
It would be average earnings across the
So it's
industry.
average.
It's average.
Okay. So the other thing on priorities, can you tell me what, I didn't understand no wrong door. Can you give me an example?
Sure. This is a question that's come up before. The idea behind a no wrong door ecosystem is that any kind of entrepreneur or startup is able to go to any organization in our ecosystem. So we have the Chamber of Commerce, the SBDC, Startup Longmont, the Economic Development Partnership, and no matter which door they enter the ecosystem in, they're able to be referred to the resources that they need.
Okay.
So it's a no wrong door
All right.
ecosystem.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. I think this is a terrific presentation, and it's very helpful. I know you have piles of stuff that you would just love to show us, but
Yes.
anyway. My question is also about income, and this is sort of a persistent strangeness in a way, because on page, the one that says prosperity and the median family income for 2018, and you list the source as the U.S. Census Bureau, which does, in the American Community Survey, does separate things out by county, but I mean by city.
Yes.
And in the U.S. Census Bureau, that I just looked up, they list the median family income as $66,349, which is about $33,000 per capita. But yours says $81,626, which is a big difference. HUD, on the other hand, only does things by county.
Yes.
And so it skews, as we all know, it skews way high. So, which is it? Or did you take the median between the two?
So what I did was I wanted to align the data that you see here with other discussions that we've been having as a community, particularly around Boulder County AMI.
Yeah,
and so
okay.
I used the Boulder County AMI as a benchmark, and then took HUD actually calculates that as a inflation adjusted figure from 2015 American Community Survey census data. And so I took 2015 American Community Survey data for Longmont and used the same inflation adjuster that they used for Boulder County to Longmont, which is why you may see a slightly higher indicator for Longmont in median family income than what the census reports, partly because they'll be using different inflation adjusters. And the sampling data for HUD that they use to estimate Boulder County is somewhat different than the sampling data that ACS uses.
Yeah, right. And SHAFA uses HUD estimates too, so.
Right.
It's all, and the Labor Department talks in terms of earnings, which is not the same as income. It's a much higher number because it's how much it costs an employer to employ somebody, and that's a much different thing, but it's useful for employers, of course.
And Mayor Pro Tem Christensen, if I may add as well, just to be a bit more specific than Morgan was in terms of aligning our data with data being used by the city in other conversations. This data specifically aligns with the data that was used in development of the inclusionary housing ordinance.
I know, but yes, That's the problem. Okay, thanks.
All right, nobody else is. I just got a couple questions, and you have to forgive me.
Mayor
I'm in a
Bagley.
bad mood because I've got to go to DC in the morning, and it's just, yeah. The more I think about it, the more upset I get. So you ready? So I just
Sure,
couple
Mayor
questions. So you're
Bagley.
going to be treated like you're back in my old grad school class. So Morgan. So first of all, why did you pick the issue of attracting millennials to Longmont as one of your focus areas?
It's not a listed focus area. It was just it was just something that came up in conversation and is a useful illustration to show that the Advanced Longmont 1.0 framework, where we have discrete working groups or focus areas between real estate and infrastructure and business climate and quality of life, actually intersect together on a variety of issues. We could also talk about multimodal transit or any other issue that really besets your heart, and likely it will sit at the intersection between a few of those original focus areas, which led us to updating to our Advanced Longmont 2.0 focus
Got
areas.
it. So so it's not so much the issue. That's the issue is an example to show that your challenge,
Yes.
so to speak, is that real estate and infrastructure, business climate, and quality of life really are a universal lens to look at whatever issue we're dealing with. And you
yes,
used
essentially,
affordable
Mayor
housing,
Bagley.
good-paying jobs, and social amenities because that's the language that this council tends to use.
Correct,
And you're
Mayor
just
Bagley.
reading your audience,
Yes.
right? As Jessica's smiling. Okay. And then next, I guess okay, with that understanding, that makes sense. So your focus area is business climate, talent, place, industry. Okay, that makes sense with that explanation. So good. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. Thank you, Council.
All right. Appreciate you coming. Thanks, Ms. Erickson.
Actually, if I may, Mayor Bagley
You're just
and
pushing it, aren't you, Jess?
members of council, yes, apologize. Just want to take a couple more minutes of your time. I think very importantly to revisit the original questions that we had, so we can make sure that we don't get too much further down the road in continuing to build out this strategy to find out that there are some causes for concern by council members, again, because we would like to come back to you ultimately to have the Advanced Longmont 2.0 strategy adopted as the citywide economic development strategy supported by this council. And so just a reminder of the feedback that we're looking to get from you. Welcome any comments, doesn't have to be in any order, but just if there is anything, and I think we've answered some questions about where there might be items within what we've presented that lack clarity or isn't easily digestible or that needs to be better defined. But more importantly for me at this point, any immediate concerns with alignment and synergy with your work plan or any barriers that you would see based on what you've seen so far to future adoption by this council, and if and how you would like to individually and collectively be involved in implementation once we get to that point.
Mayor Pro Tem.
I do think you've done a lot of great work in reimagining how things have changed over time from the original plan. For instance, we always talked about manufacturing, but manufacturing is an entirely different thing. There's as we all know, there's 3D printer. Well, it's a whole different thing, and things that we used to not consider in manufacturing are really broadly done by many, many different people. And also, I think the change in thinking about primary industries versus local industries, I believe that we're moving along to understanding that all local industries are actually potentially worldwide too. And that's been true for a long time. But I understand that you're talking about where the bulk of their revenue is generated and it has an effect. But as time goes on, I think we will begin thinking a bit differently about that too. But I congratulate you on really rethinking how the original plan needs to change into different categories. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. Do you have any other questions, comments, or concerns for council, Jess?
So I take this that council's good with us moving forward on this?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Does anyone not approve of what we've heard tonight? Dr. Waters, dun, 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 dun.
No, I'm not going to. It was a bad time for me to weigh in because I think it's a great report. You've done great work, Morgan. Well done. I'm just curious, Jessica, if you have some, I don't know, aspirations, expectations, needs in terms of council response to your question. Not just in terms of how we verbalize a response, but what we do. Where do you need us collectively or individually in ways that will help have the greatest impact on advancing Longmont 2.0?
And thank you for that question, Councilman Waters. So in regards to the first couple of questions, we were really looking to just get clarity and a little bit of direction or kind of a thumbs up, thumbs down in terms of the direction that we're heading, and anything that we need to do a better job of clarifying within the strategy as it exists so far. I think relative to the final question of how you want to be involved individually and collectively, I think with your work plan, you've all identified those areas within that where you see yourself as leading the efforts of that work plan, and hopefully you saw the significant amount of alignment between the two, and so would hope to call on you individually to help continue with that alignment and to be embedded into the advanced Longmont strategy in the same way and implementation of that in the same way that you are with the council work plan. And I think it helps to create efficiency and eliminate maybe some potential overlap or confusion between kind of multiple efforts going on at one time. So I think that would be one of the ways. And then ultimately, again, adopting and kind of accepting and championing, I hate that word, championing, Advanced Longmont 2.0 as your own, as not just the Longmont EDP economic development strategy, but the city of Longmont and thereby the Longmont City Council's economic development strategy, something that can sustain over time and over future councils similar to some of the other work that you're doing as part of your work plan. Okay.
All right. Anything else?
No, that was all. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Jess. All right. Let's go on to the ordinance amending the Longmont the ordinance. See that championing comment got me all tongue-tied. Let's move on to 11C, ordinances amending the Longmont Municipal Code on city rebate programs.
Mayor Bagley, members of council, Sandy Cedar, Assistant City Manager, and I'm joined by members of the lean rebate team behind me from the different utilities and everyone that kind of helped along with this. You all asked for me to bring this back to you so that you could check out the ordinances prior to consent, which we're hoping for March 5th. So let me just go through very briefly. You can see that 5 to 7 minutes at the most is my presentation. This first slide really just talks about where we've been so far. So in mid-2018, y'all asked to bring back some level of a grocery tax rebate. We did that, as well as realizing that we could streamline all of our rebates a lot better than they are currently issued. And so we brought that concept to you on December 5th, and you said yes. You didn't even hear the whole presentation, read the council comments, said please go forth, so we did. And so you've now asked for this meeting to take a look at these ordinances prior to consent. So just to remind you, proposed design for the grocery tax is based on the USDA amount of groceries that people generally purchase, as well as the budget for the grocery tax rebate. So we're suggesting $78 for a single person, $204 for a family, that's up to 3. This next one kind of shows you what the rest of the rebates look like today and how they are all sort of qualified on different types of things, some of them from 104 PTC, which is the property tax rebate, some of them through LEAP, which is the low-income energy assistance program. They all have different income qualifications and sort of different application. So our proposed process is to let people apply on kind of a single piece of paper, either online, over the phone, or in person in several different city facilities. And then we have a central rebate administration in the accounting department that would basically make sure that the documentation was pulled together, give that to utility billing, and you would get a utility bill credit for all of the rebates in one swath. If you didn't pay utility bills, a lot of times people pay utilities through their rent, but they don't actually have their own utility bill, then they would receive the grocery tax rebate, the sales tax grocery tax rebate as a check. So that's what this says. These are the proposed changes. So in other words, this is what it would look like for somebody. How much money they would get based on, you know, kind of in one piece as part of their rebate. They would receive, let's see here, the property tax rebate, they would receive a Parks and Greenway maintenance rebate. They would receive their electric rebate, their water rebate, and the sales tax rebate in one process. So this is a little more complicated than you might think. It looks pretty easy right here, but there's actually 6 ordinances that this affects. Most of them are just taking out a lot of this, the current wording. So the first one that we're talking about is 4.08. This is currently the property tax refund. What we've done is built all the rebates into this one ordinance. So 4.08 really changes it from property tax refund to the city rebate programs for low-income qualified residents. The other 5 ordinances basically align themselves with 4.08 and just refer to 4.08. So it cuts out all the language that defines each of the individual rebate programs and refers back to 4.08. So it strikes a lot of language in those 5. So it looks a little weird because there's 6 ordinances total that refer to this. That's my presentation. Before I go on to next steps, are there any questions from the council about the ordinances, the introduction, or the program?
Indeed. Mayor Pro Tem Christensen.
Yes.
This is just short. When we strike out property tax rebate, that doesn't mean that all the senior citizens will get no property tax rebate?
Correct.
Through the county unless they apply for this?
Well, so currently you apply every year for a rebate on property tax. So this would strike that language and basically replace it with this rebate program. It's the same piece except it actually income qualifies a higher number of people than today.
Actually, you just do it once when you turn 65 at the county level.
Oh yeah, that's true. It's not related to the county piece. This is just the city rebate side.
Okay.
Yes,
that's
sorry.
fine.
Thank you.
All
Maggie,
right,
for
so there's
catching that.
a property tax rebate for senior citizens?
Yes, for city, the city
For the
property
city?
tax or rebate.
Oh, I didn't know that. Well, anyway, okay.
Actually,
right.
should hopefully give more seniors more rebates. That's what we're hoping for.
All right, so I guess I've got one question, and that's to my fellow council members. Are they on the right track? Okay. We look forward to seeing it on first reading.
Excellent. Let me show you our next steps really quickly. Longmont Cares is the name of this new system. You can't quite check out a whole lot yet on the website because first you have to enact the ordinances. But once you do and we get going, this is where you'll be able to see all that information. Applications will be available at the Senior Center, Youth Center, and Civic Center. And we'll be distributing information at all the different social service areas all through the county. That's the deal. So we'll bring back those ordinances to you on first reading for March 5th, second reading on March 19th. And I just really want to thank everybody behind me who's been working on this lien rebate piece. And a little shout out to Shirley Parker, who's been helping us as our citizen, making sure that everything's really going to help out with folks. So my thanks.
Yes, we're not quite done. And Councilmember Martin gave me Twizzlers, so she's at the front of the queue. Councilmember Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. Sandy, my question is, you listed a bunch of ways to apply. I did not see a method for people who don't use computers and are housebound to apply. How do they apply?
So they'll be able to apply by phone. They can call any of those areas as well, and we'll help them with their application.
So I just missed it. Thank you.
Yeah, well, and one of the things that that we did actually that Becky helped to run was the focus groups with folks that we thought would maybe take advantage of this program, and we heard pretty loud and clear they don't really want to do it online. We'll offer it online, but they'd really rather go in and do it with somebody. So we'll make sure that that staff's available to make sure that that happens.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Mayor Pro Tem.
I meant to thank you for all your work on this. It's really genius to include everything together because we did a survey a few years ago that Longmont Housing and Human Services got, and of all the possible help that people can get, 1 out of 8 people gets it, because the truth is nobody really wants to ask for help. We're taught to be self-sufficient. But if it is made a little bit more available and looks friendly and looks like you're not getting charity, you're just, you know, this will be helpful to people. It may not look like a lot to some people, but it's a lot if you don't have anything. So thank you for all your hard work and for this.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And shout out to Ann Jordan and Marika Unger for putting together the marketing information.
All right, thank you. All right, let's move on to the 2019 legislative bills recommended for city council position.
Mayor Bagley, members of council, Sandy Cedar, Assistant City Manager again, here to talk about two bills that we've put out there. The first one was at the request of Councilmember Waters, House Bill 1052, the Early Childhood Development Special District. Last week we talked a little bit about what did this mean, what was this really for, and the bill we went back through and took a look. Actually, Mayor Pro Tem Christensen and I looked at it in more detail this morning. The bill authorizes any set of electors, so it's not a county-wide special district or a city-wide special district. It's very similar to other types of special districts where any group of electors can put this together. I think it will likely be used, if it passes, more on either a statewide basis, a county or a municipal basis. But any kind of elector group that wants to get together to create a special district needs to go to the county commissioners, not to the city council, to put that together. That being said, it does allow for funding and taxation of themselves to be able to provide additional early care and education opportunities in that area, which is part of council's vision. So because of that, staff recommends council support 1052.
So you said, so I like the idea, but the county commissioners would be determining this for Longmont?
Yes. This bill states that the petition goes to the county commissioners.
I don't like that.
Of course, it's council's position, so
Mayor Pro Tem?
however y'all would like to move forward.
Yeah, I've been trying to figure out, I know that CML supports this, and of course it sounds like a terrific idea. I think, you know, as we all know, the devil is in the details, and I do think that this is perfect for everything we're trying to do for early childhood learning, but I actually think if it's a county-wide thing, that's a good idea. But if it gets into more balkanizing and, you know, I don't want one neighborhood that has a lot of money to start their own little special district, and then the very people who have no money at all can't do anything. So I actually would like to, I can't support this till I find out a little bit more about it, and I haven't, I need to contact people at CML and find out. I'm unclear about what entity decides it. It can be the county. It's sort of, when you read the bill, it can also be the municipality. So until I'm clear on that, I can't really support it, because I don't want to increase the inequality of educational opportunities. I don't think that's what they're trying to do here, though, at all. But anyway.
And Mayor Pro Tem Harold just reminded me that it's the electors that decide kind of the area, but it is the commissioners that approve it in the end. After there's, it's the commissioners are the ones that are kind of the keepers of the special district. But the electors are the ones that vote on it themselves, similar to other districts.
So the electors, so like our neighborhood would come together and say, hey, we want a special education district. Mm-hmm. We vote for it. Mm-hmm. And then once it passes, the county commissioners can veto it?
Well, it's filed with the county commissioners.
But they don't have any say in it?
Not that I can tell. That's the way that Article 24 says it, is that they're the ones that are the keepers of the district.
I was going to ask Harold, he has something to say, but do you want to go first, Councilmember Martin?
Maybe. My reading of the bill was that the county commissioners have oversight of the districts. But, for example, the city of Longmont could draw up such a district and have it contiguous with the city limits, and it would all just work great. And we wouldn't have oversight of our own district in terms of the administrative pieces. So
That's the intention. That's
So
the
they
intention.
just, they collect the money and give it to us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
So,
I like that.
Yeah, so my.
Hey, county commissioners, go get our monies. We'll see you in a year.
Yeah, let them do the dirty, the scut work, you
like
know.
that.
Yeah, so my feeling is let's not let the perfect become the enemy of the good. This is an okay bill and it would work for us, so I approve. I agree with supporting it,
We'll make the motion then.
and I so move.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Nobody else is in the queue. Let's go ahead and vote. Councilmember Peck? All right, that passes 6-4, 1 against, and that's Mayor Pro Tem Christensen against.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. The second bill that I've brought to you is Senate Concurrent Resolution 001, which is the transfer of the Great Outdoors Colorado money to the State Education Fund. Voters voted for GOCO to really be created based on state lottery funds, and those funds to be able to go towards things like recreation, outdoor, and conservation. City of Longmont has gained an awful lot of that revenue through excellent grant writing and great projects. And so this bill would essentially take monies outside of the bonds that are currently paying off current projects and move that to the State Education Fund. While education is very important, the voters voted for it in this manner. And so the council, we're suggesting that the council oppose Senate Current Resolution 001.
Councilmember Finley?
I move we oppose SCR 1901.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Let's vote. Yeah, if you vote for it, you're opposing it. Dr. Waters? We'll vote harder. Okay, that passes unanimously. All right.
Thank you very much.
All right, let's move on to final call, public invited to be heard. There's somebody here. You want to say something, sir? Yeah. No, it doesn't matter. You're the only one here. Want to say anything? All right, he's here with the press. Yeah, quietly just listening as always. All right, well, let's go ahead and close final call, public invited to be heard. Mayor and there's all kinds of people. All right, Mayor and council comments. All right, there we go. Oh, we almost got away with it. Mayor Pro Tem, you gonna hit your button? Go. Okay, Mayor Pro Tem.
I just want to remind people that there is a fundraiser gathering for El Comité, a very worthwhile local organization coming up in March. And so please contact El Comité and get your tickets right away.
March 2nd, Saturday.
Yeah, you're right. March 2nd, Saturday.
I'd announce how much the tickets were, but something tells me that I got swindled. Well, they are $100. Okay, good. They're $100. So I didn't get swindled. I was like, $100? Okay. All right. City manager, any remarks?
No comment.
Exactly. No comments? City attorney remarks?
No comments, Mayor.
Okay, all right, great. We're adjourned.